Okay, so this morning for African American history, the main thing I want to make sure everybody understands is that you have a quiz. Jason, you've already completed that, so you're kind of exempt, but um, Kevin and Kamaya, just a reminder that you do have a quiz over chapters 8 through 13 for this week. There's also some extra reading for you to do as well this week, just so we can get the book kind of done and processed before the end of the year. So the assignment for the week again is your stamped quiz, which I don't think is really all that hard if you do the reading, to be perfectly honest. There's extra reading, like I said, chapters 14 and 15 are on top of that, just to kind of get us a jump start on kind of getting to the halfway point before we move to spring break. Next week, you will have readings in chapters 16 through 19 and African-American leaders at the turn of the century assignment. And that's mostly going over 5 different leaders in African-American history from the late 1800s. It's Booker T. Washington, W.B. Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, Ida B. Wells, and Madam C.J. Walker. So I'm going to ask you to kind of do some research on those 5 individuals. That'll be next week. Next week, of course, is a shortened week. You only have 4 days before you go on spring break. So again, this is just kind of assignments that you have before spring break. You're only going to have 3 assignments really in the grade book before you go on spring break. And then when you get back from spring break, seniors, you only have roughly 5 weeks before you start gearing up towards graduation. So we are hitting that kind of weird spot of the year for seniors where some effort starts to drop off. And I think it kind of starts with days like today, where it's going to be 70 degrees and sunny. You kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel. You're going to need to try and power through that as best you can, especially not necessarily in my course per se, because most of you just, if you don't need the elective credit, you just kind of need a decent grade to move on. But I'm going to kind of reiterate the fact that every single one of you needs to pass English 4. So every single one of you needs to pass that English course. So don't let Gaines or Gillian down at the finish line here. Let's make sure we're powering through in the classes that you absolutely need to pass and get credit for in order to graduate. And you Butler Tech folks, a lot of your elective credit is wrapped up in your Butler Tech programs. So do not stumble towards the finish line. Power through as best you can. And kind of get done with work as early as possible. I'm going to be very light on the assignments for African American history towards the finish line. So I'm trying to meet you halfway, but just make sure that you kind of understand that as we start gearing down towards the end of the year, some people's effort starts to drop off a little bit. So try and fight through that as best as possible. Grades have been updated. There are a couple of you that still haven't turned in, more than a couple that haven't turned in the reparations assignment. And I had 2 people complete. Jason, you're one of them. The stamped quiz already, which is great. Both of you did very well, so that's good. So again, trying to get that done by the end of the week. And again, you'll have African-American leaders at the turn of the century as the assignment going into spring break. As per the readings in stamped right now, the time frame that you're in is you are transitioning from the antebellum through Lincoln and then into the late 1800s. So to give you kind of some basic background here, the author has transitioned now to talking about William Lloyd Garrison and Frederick Douglass, who were the primary people in charge of the anti-slavery or abolitionist movement, as it was known. The abolitionist movement basically is given rise through the Second Great Awakening, where a lot of people start to kind of transition over and become a little bit more religious. Some people actually convert into a new form of Christianity, or some of them actually do become Christian themselves. And they start asking questions. Can a Christian believe in slavery at the same time? Can you be a Christian and be okay with slavery? And their answer is quite basically no, that you cannot believe in Christian dogma. You cannot believe in the teachings of Jesus and then still have a slave as well. Now, there are going to be some people in the South predominantly that are going to fight against that. And that kind of lays the groundwork for what eventually is going to cause the Civil War. But the people that are going to stoke the flames of that are the abolitionists, the people that are going to kind of keep that religious fervor going into a political discourse. Going to be people like William Lloyd Garrison, who starts the newspaper The Liberator up in Boston. And he purposely ships that stuff down into South Carolina, into Virginia, into Georgia. You know, he ships his pamphlets down there to try and, you know, really attack slavery as an institution where it lives, which was a new form of abolitionist thought. It was certainly a new track that he was going on. So very much a different a course of attack, and it works because it really stokes the flames and it causes a tremendous amount of backlash from Southerners. But again, it kind of fans the flames that will eventually cause the Civil War. Now, where does Frederick Douglass step in? You know, William Lloyd Garrison is a white man, so his, you know, yelling and screaming about slavery is important, of course. That, you know, he's proving that there are white people who are opposed to this. But to then have someone who was a slave come out of slavery and really kind of do a kind of hatchet job on slavery as an institution from the inside. It's one thing for Harriet Beecher Stowe to write a book about slavery, being a white woman from the North. It's quite another for a former slave to come up and eloquently write a autobiography like Frederick Douglass did, to kind of expose the issues of slavery, to talk about, you know, how how a slave would possibly escape and come into the North and become an abolitionist themselves. And a lot of Southerners started to say, you know, we don't think Frederick Douglass actually was a slave because he's too well spoken, he's too well read. So he literally has to kind of prove that, go out and speak and talk about it. He has to prove that he once was a slave, which then causes a backlash again. And this is what the main problem is about being a leader within the African American community at the time, is you have to almost kind of step forward and say, hey, I have proof that I once was a slave. Well, if you have proof that you were once were a slave, you have stolen your body, you have stolen property by leaving and going to the North. So that there was backlash again, where a lot of abolitionist leaders started to say, you know, I think they're going to come after you. They're going to send somebody up here to capture you and take you back into slavery into Maryland. So Frederick Douglass actually goes over to London. You know, he goes over and kind of escapes again, goes over to London to kind of live there for a little while and to publish even more and to kind of prove that he was indeed a former slave and that he is capable of having these higher level thoughts, having eloquent discourse, having, you know, leading the charge against slavery. So that's what makes Frederick Douglass and sets him apart. And his triumphant return, you know, to the United States, he leads a tremendous wave of people who are pushing the abolitionist mindset. And this is what's going to influence Lincoln during the Civil War to finally declare emancipation and eventually abolition under the 13th Amendment. The book then transitions. It doesn't spend a lot of time on Lincoln, which you would think a lot of times with African American history, they would spend a great deal of time talking about the Civil War, talking about Lincoln. Kendi and Reynolds do not. They kind of skirt the issue on Lincoln a little bit. They give him about a chapter, but then they move directly into the leadership of people like Booker T. Washington, people like W.B. Du Bois, and talking about Marcus Garvey, who usually gets kind of short shrift in especially the American history textbook about his mindset. To give you a basic mindset of all three of these guys, Booker T. Washington is very much more labeled as almost a Black apologist, that, you know, he basically kind of points out like, well, if we want equality, if we want opportunities, then we have to earn them. We have to kind of show that we're willing to learn, that we're willing to work hard, that we're willing to adapt and assimilate to American culture, white culture, whatever you want to call it. W.B. Du Bois is completely opposed to that. He believes that we don't, you know, the African Americans don't need to earn a thing. They've already earned it, that they deserve equal treatment under the law because they are citizens, because they are part of this culture, they're part of this country. And regardless of how they speak, regardless of their education levels, it shouldn't matter. They should have equality. So Du Bois is he runs very much counter to this. Garvey is kind of in a lane unto himself. He is an immigrant himself. He was born in Jamaica. He comes to the United States and leads the basically the United Negro Improvement Association. So he's kind of pushing for improvement to the Black community, but he pushes even farther. He basically makes the argument that we should return to Africa. That's kind of what his basic mantra is, that if we're not appreciated here, if we're not going to be offered equality here, well, then let's bring what we are back to Africa and form our own culture and form our own society, our own economy. So he actually kind of pushes the idea of the American Colonization Society way back in the 1800s, that, you know, if we're not wanted here, then let's go back, which is a completely different version of Black nationalism, if you will. So all three of them have, you know, a pretty basic effect upon African American culture. Now, the other two leaders that I put in there for next week, by the way, were Ida B. Wells, who did brave and crusading effort against lynching in the South, and really kind of went toe to toe with the remnants of the KKK, risking her life, risking her career. She was a brave woman to do what she did. And then Madam C.J. Walker, who becomes one of the most successful Black business owners, especially during the late 1800s, through her enterprising spirit and learning how to kind of play the game. And she definitely would have been on the Booker T. Washington side, that you work and you outmaneuver and you kind of prove your equality through your hard work, dedication, and showing your ingenuity. So they're all kind of very important leaders to the cause, if you will. And that's what kind of the book will be kind of discussing as they move away from the Civil War and into the 1900s. That's just giving you a basic backdrop on everything. Again, I don't want to keep you too long. I want you to get outside sometime today and enjoy the sunshine, enjoy the fresh air, and really just kind of enjoy kind of your transition here about a week or so into spring break. A reminder that for those of you that are in person now on AB schedules, we are not doing that over the next 2 days. So Thursday and Friday, and I know this doesn't affect remote learners, but Thursday and Friday are testing days for the air test. The English air test is being given tomorrow morning and Friday. So if you do show up to school tomorrow, if you are an in-person learner, you would show up around 10:20 and you would go to your cohort. It's just cohort for the rest of the day. So it's up to you what you want to do and how you want to handle that with your parents. You certainly have the right to call in and say, hey, look, we're just going to work from home today. Again, I'm not telling you that's what you should do or anything like that, but I had a number of people in my cohort who were kind of saying, well, what's the point of us coming in? So if that's how you want to play it, it's up to you. But again, I want to remind you not to show up early tomorrow, as the sophomores are taking their air test in the morning. So please make sure that you kind of make plans accordingly for what you're going to do Thursday and Friday. We will return to the AB schedule starting Monday next week. If you have any questions or concerns, obviously you can stick around. Otherwise, have a great day. Stay safe, stay healthy.